Hey everybody, it's Sean here bringing you another how-to video. Today we're going to be tackling the install of a set of ND3 Mazda MX-5 Miata taillights on an ND1 or ND2 Miata. This is all still the same generation, however, the ND3 taillights are 2024 and newer. They came out a little fancier. They're all LED now. They've got a center reverse light and an all LED turn signal, which I think is what really sells this taillight. The depth of the actual running light and taillight itself looks to be much cleaner as well. So I'm going to throw these on a 2020 Mazda MX-5 RF or retractable fastback, and then the GT Touring or Grand Touring model. Specifically, this process should apply to an ND1 or ND2 Miata as well. So we're just basically upgrading to the newer style taillight. We'll take a look at what we'll need. I've got some shop towels and some alcohol just to clean some surfaces through the process here. I've got a Phillips and a flat blade screwdriver. I've got a 1/4-inch ratchet with a 10mm socket and a small extension. I've got a really small flat blade screwdriver, or a trim removal tool will work as well. Got a little handy shop light here just to give us a better look at what we're doing. Of course, the ND3 taillights, you can buy those new or used. I found a gently used set for a good deal on a forum. Pretty excited on the deal I got. And then I also have the MX-5 Things wiring harness for this with included 5-ohm resistors. This just helps clean up the process so you don't have to cut any of the factory wiring harness. To me, it's a cleaner way of doing it, especially if you think there's a chance you might go back and maybe sell the ND3 lights when you sell your car or something like that. It just makes it easily reversible. Okay, here we are on the car. First thing you're gonna do is pop your trunk, of course. And I highly recommend this step not necessary, but I think it'll be a helpful step for you. Use a little painter's tape and mask off the painted edges around the taillight. This will help when you remove that taillight. It's kind of a forceful process, and I've heard of a few people nicking their paint, especially on some of these hard corners or edges. And so if you throw a little painter's tape, it takes some time, but if you take the 10 minutes to throw some painter's tape around your taillights, it might actually save you from ruining your paint finish. So not a necessary step, but something I would highly recommend. Okay, to start the actual taillight removal process, the first thing we're going to do is remove this hard plastic liner on the inside of the trunk. And to do that, there's 4 pop rivets, just like this one, that we're going to remove. To get this thing freed up, you first need to use your trim removal tool or small flat blade screwdriver, pry up the inside like this one, and then after that you should be able to pull that entire pop rivet loose and free it up from the liner. So there's one here, there's another here on this side, and then we'll come back to this side here. Got that one, and then there's a 4th there. Once you're able to remove that, you just have to be a little tricky or a little careful of the wiring harness for this trunk light on the inside. So you can see now that I've got all 4 of these freed up, I can actually pry this piece away from the trunk, and that will free up where that harness is. And it's just that one white clip. You depress the end and you pull it away, and that'll let you free up this entire trunk panel. Okay, now with that panel removed, we're gonna remove this carpeting here on the side to free up the access area for the taillight. So we've got 5 more of these pop rivets. There's one here, there's gonna be one on the bottom, one on the back here, there, and then you'll have to remove this one as well. Once you get those removed, then you can pull away this entire carpet trim. Now that the carpet is removed, the next step is to loosen this 10mm nut holding the taillight in place. Of course, we're going to turn that counterclockwise. We're going to need to disconnect the pigtail at this clip. So we'll remove this white clip from the factory harness to the taillight. we're going to push this rubber grommet behind the green and yellow wires there. We're going to push that forward, as in through the hole here. And that will allow us to take this entire taillight harness and push it through that hole when we remove the taillight. And then we'll need to remove this small Phillips screw, or Japanese industrial standard JIS screw, from the top of the taillight. Now everything's been disconnected. We're going to move up here, and I'm going to show you how we're going to remove the taillight from the chassis. With one hand, we're going to gently pull from right here. You can see this side should be fairly loose at this point. And while we're pulling, we're actually going to push the rest of that harness all the way through this hole. And we're going to use our index finger or our thumb and push straight back towards the back of the car, straight backwards. We're going to gently push this corner. There is a clip right here that fixes the taillight to the chassis, and we need pressure to go straight back to unclip that. And you do want to be careful, use a little finesse through this process. You don't want to break that clip, you don't want to be pushing, or you certainly don't want to be angling and cranking, leverage on that tab. You could risk breaking it. This is also your last chance to throw a little painter's tape around the edges of your paint to prevent any slips or mishaps when you remove the taillight. You can see I've got my taillight removed, but that is the tab that you are pushing against. So you can see, again, it's right parallel with that hole. So you want to have pressure coming straight back. And this is the plastic tab on the taillight housing itself that little slot fits in. Now we're ready to take our new taillight, the ND3 taillight, and we'll get that fit, of course, right where we removed the old one. First thing you'll want to do is take your harness and do your best to feed it through that little hole in the chassis. As you fit up the new taillight in place, you'll want to, again, feed the wire through, and then after that, just kind of get this side set up, but first try to align the plastic tab with that little round notch, and you'll just use a light amount of force to get that to lock in place. Once you've done that, everything should be pretty stable. You can see this side's still loose. We'll put that Phillips head screw in, and we'll get our 10mm nut back on the back side of this bolt just so we can secure it in place before we start the wiring process. Just a quick reminder, as you're securing this Phillips head screw and the 10mm nut there, don't crank on that. No need to use excessive force. You don't want to risk stripping anything out or snapping that bolt off or the stud off from the taillight. Just get it nice and snug and you should be all right. Next thing you'll do is pull that grommet all the way through with the wiring harness. It should look something like that once you get it all the way through. And next you'll take your alcohol and rags, and I like this spot there in the corner. You can see I've already mounted the 5 ohm resistor. I actually had the MX-5 things LED sequential lights in my factory ND2 taillights. So I've already got a 5 ohm resistor from MX-5 things mounted, but you'll have to do that process for this, the ND3 conversion if you are going to use the MX-5 things harness. So I picked that spot, just clean that area with a little alcohol, and you can use the included adhesive to mount that in place. The next step is we'll take the included MX-5 things harness and we'll plug it in here to the ND3 plug, and that will allow us to also connect to this 5 ohm resistor and to the original factory harness. And so the whole reason we need the MX-5 things harness or kit there is because these two pins don't match up from the ND1 or ND2 to the ND3 style taillights. So this will prevent any sort of need to cut into either wiring harness and do any splicing of wires The 5 ohm resistor is there to help prevent any sort of hyperflashing. In this car, I do actually already have LED turn signals in the front and also on the side markers. So if I did not have this 5 ohm resistor, there's a good chance I would have hyperflashing when I turn my signal on. Okay, now we're ready to hook up our wiring. So here's the other side harness. I'm going to use this one as an example. So this plug here goes to the ND3 taillight, the pigtail we just pulled through the hole. This spot, this plug here, will go way in the back there to the original factory harness where we disconnected the taillight originally. This black plug here will go to your 5 ohm resistor, as you can see, like back there. And the fourth and final plug is actually optional. This allows you to tap into the ND1 and ND2 reverse lights if you want the ND3 reverse lights and the ND3 taillights to work with your ND1 or ND2 vehicle. So as you know, the ND1 and ND2 have the bumper reverse lights. You will retain these even with the steps we've followed today, but if you do want the ND3 reverse lights to work as well, you'll need to use this fourth and optional plug. You'll need to get some wire. I'd recommend 20 gauge wire because I think that's what these terminals are for. These are included in the MX-5 Things kit, and you can see the male version of that plug, just a 2-pin connector. You'll have to wire some these terminals here and then fit them in this connector. That will pair with this female plug, and you'll run that wire to your factory ND1, ND2 reverse lights harness. I would choose to route that, if I was going to follow that procedure today, I would route that through that same grommet, through the chassis, and then I'll show you where the reverse lights plug would be on the wiring harness underneath the car. Okay, here we are underneath the car. We're looking at the inside of the bumper cover right now. You can see just behind the left rear wheel. And you can see where there's this plug that I've disconnected. That's a 2-pin plug. That goes to this gray socket there. That's where the reverse light bulb is right on that socket. So I've disconnected this plug here, and that is where you'll tap into. There's a black wire, that's ground, and there's a black and white striped wire. That's going to be your power to the reverse lights when you put your vehicle in reverse. So that's the wire you need to tap into for power. The black one, of course, is ground. If you do choose to use that optional fourth plug to make your ND3 taillights have the reverse lights work inside the taillight. All right, now that we've got everything connected in the trunk, hopefully you've decided whether or not you want to use the optional fourth plug to tap into the ND1, ND2 reverse lights and have all 4 reverse lights come on. In my case, I decided not to, mainly because I didn't want to tap into the factory wiring harness and invite corrosion to potentially set in. There's certainly clean ways of doing that. Hopefully these instructions are helpful and you can decide on your own whether or not you'd like to follow that process. I did not, but I also wanted to take a minute to show you the difference between the ND3 and the ND1 or ND2 taillight. One noticeable difference right away is the brightness. The ND3 taillight is certainly brighter. I'd say about 30% brighter it looks like. The turn signal is a lot cleaner. You can tell it's truly meant for an LED in there. In my case, I lose the sequential function, or the inverse sequential function of the MX-5 Things chipboard that I have in there. Little bummer I lose that, but aside from that, in my opinion, it's certainly an upgrade. Very noticeable difference in person. I do like the idea of the additional reverse lights in the taillight. And perhaps I'll change my mind and I can tackle that project in the future. But for right now, I just think it's better to leave it completely reversible in case I do sell the car, or to prevent any sort of wiring issue in the future if that wire would corrode. And any electrical gremlins are tricky and chasing down as it is, so I don't need to invite that opportunity in my vehicle. But hopefully these instructions have been helpful, and if you do want to use that optional fourth plug, you certainly can. Hopefully this helps guide you along that process too. But nonetheless, I would encourage anybody to consider this upgrade. It's certainly not a difficult one. I think the looks are improved. That's in the eye of the beholder, of course, but appreciate your time following along today. Hope you have a blessed day. If you wouldn't mind, do me a favor, comment if you have questions, like and subscribe for more how-to videos, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.